afternoon, good evening, wherever you're
Hi,
from.
everybody.
First of all, I want to give a round of applause to all our filmmakers.
Definitely.
Did a great job with the films. Thank you for
Definitely.
sharing with us. And also thank you to Aiko and her team for putting on this festival, especially, in these troubled times that we're in. My name is Shane Slater. I'm a freelance film critic. I've been writing about film for about 10, 11 years now for various outlets and covering different festivals. And I'm so honored to be a part of this one. I love supporting Caribbean film and Caribbean festivals. So now I just want to hand over to you filmmakers to just briefly introduce yourself, and then we'll go into the Q&A.
Okay,
Juliette,
cool.
do you want to start?
Okay, cool.
Or Javed? Javed, go ahead.
All right. So, hi, everybody. My name is Javed DaSouza. I am a filmmaker from St. Vincent and the Grenadines. My work primarily consists of addressing social issues because I like my work to impact people's life for the better. Yeah, and I just want to say shout out to Iko and the team for putting together this festival, like you said, because it has been very, very revolutionary for me. Meeting all these other creatives and so forth and so forth. So thanks for that. And I thoroughly enjoyed all your films tonight. I really, really enjoyed them. So big up on that one. Yeah. Yep.
Juliette?
Hi, I'm Juliette McCawley. I'm from Trinidad and Tobago. My film is Sampson's Heart. I've just been trying to tell stories since 2005 on a wide variety of topics. A lot of them are very psychological, but I'm really delighted to have a chance to share my film through this festival. So big up the team. Thanks so much for letting me be part of this.
Hi, I'm Maya Cozier. I directed the short She Paradise. I adapted She Paradise into a micro-budget feature-length film. All of the women in it are mostly non-actors. And that's something that I've sort of been working on since sorry, my cats are like acting really crazy. That's something that I've been working on since I graduated from undergrad at film school. And I'm excited.
All right, thank you for being with us. So I'm going to throw out a few questions to all of you, and then we'll go into a Q&A from the audience afterwards. So first, I think a lot of people underestimate the time and effort and resources that go into a short film, especially, even though it's like 10 minutes, it can take so much time and effort. And I'd love if any of you can, just give us, some insight into what goes into making a short film. Anyone?
Well, for me, in my case, making their true story. Like I said, it could be 10 minutes, the audience, they're sitting there enjoying it. They never really know exactly what went into really creating this, because from script to the actual finished project is a lot of work, because not only do you have to really cast properly, you had to make time to practice with these people, make them feel comfortable, get their best performance and so forth and so forth. And that in itself is very time consuming. And then you gotta actually prep in terms of the set, what all you gotta do to make the set believable, make everything just flow. And sometimes you just had to cater because you never really know what could happen while you were filming as well. It's unpredictable. And me filming their true story, it took us maximum of about a week to film that, because of how much stuff was happening in the area that we didn't plan for, so we had to push back and so forth. So yeah, it's really unpredictable when it comes to filming in itself. And then taking into consideration portion, which is the editing. You had to make sure that your edit is exactly the way you want it to be, because in the editing is what you're creating for the audience itself. So you had to make sure what you're creating is what you want the audience to feel, and the information you want them to get from it and so forth. So yeah.
Anyone else wanted to chime in?
Yeah, I mean, the whole experience of doing films is always like a test. It's like the universe saying, "You sure you want to be a filmmaker?" Samson's Heart was actually the script was a feature film, and I did a teaser for it, and where it was just actually just one scene from the film, and I realized, oh, there's actually a whole little story even in this one scene. And even though I wasn't able to get funding for the feature film, which was kind of devastating and really knocked me down for a bit, um, I was kind of complaining about no money to a friend of mine who happened to have a little production house, Dion Bucco, and he's like, "Well, I've got a camera, crew. Why don't we just try and sort of mobilize and skills and time and locations." Um, and it took me so long that in the end I really had to rush. So we shot the film in 3 days, and then I only had 4 days to edit it to get it done in time to for the Trinidad and Tobago Film Festival. So yeah, it was a labor of love, only made possible by people, kind of coming together and saying, let's just tell a story. And I'm glad I pushed through, some real heartbreak in terms of wanting to just try and get this out there, and it was done.
Yeah, similarly to what Juliette was saying, I really wanted to make She Paradise into a feature. So I co-wrote a feature-length script with Melina Brown, and our goal with this short was to shoot a teaser almost that can get people excited for a longer version. So I set out to shoot this short with no budget. I spoke to some friends that I went to film school with, told them about the idea, showed them, a mood board, even showed them some casting options just to sort of get them excited. And what we did is we shot this short with just like enough to, cater and feed everyone. I actually worked with a lot of students from UE. Most of my crew was like UE film students. Camera was someone I went to school with at film school, but everyone sort of like came together and just kind of like volunteered their time to make this happen. And what I did is it's sort of back to front, but after we shot, I then took that footage and made an Indiegogo campaign to raise money to then pay for like the equipment and everything else. So it was kind of like a back to front process. Like we just kind of went for it and then did the Indiegogo to raise the money and sort of pay for it afterwards. And then that kind of helped because it made the project feel real. So when we did the campaign, people saw, okay, this is something that, is real. Like we can see the footage, we can see the actors, we know it happened. And so that kind of gave people like the confidence to give and to support a project. It is risky to do it that way, but there was that benefit that I noticed. And we did what I did was I casted with some dancers that I knew, and I spent some time leading up to shooting, just rehearsing with them because they're both non-actors, even though they had some experience performing on stage. And I think my biggest goal was just kind of was to sort of like ignore the presence of the camera and really be in the moment. So when my DP got here, we had one day where we did sort of like a fake shoot almost, where he just kind of like, even though he wasn't filming, he just kind of like held the camera really close to them while they were practicing, so that they just got used to like this big intimidating object being so close to them. And by doing that, like before we even started shooting, they started to sort of like get more comfortable with the idea and the presence of the camera and begin to get it. And so like my biggest kind of, I think like a lot of the preparation was just kind of getting the non-actors to a place where they just really could like ignore the presence of the camera and to like really live in the moment. But the short, we get a little lucky in the sense that Mika and Onessa are actually friends in real life. They were like from the same dance troupe. So the chemistry was already there. So I didn't have to do too much work building the chemistry between them. For the feature, I had to do a lot more work doing that because the girls all like came from different places and they met for the first time. But for the short, I did get a little lucky there. So that kind of like sped up the whole process. Or dogs barking, we're in the Caribbean. But yeah, that sped up the whole process of kind of like the.
You know, one thing I loved about Juliette and Javed's films is that it's showing Black Caribbean men being sensitive and vulnerable. I was wondering what motivated you guys to to create these characters from this perspective.
Well, thank you for saying that. I feel like the emotional journey of man is always shown. One of my first earlier films is actually about a father's love for his child and the lengths he went through one night to do something special for his child. And, I have brothers, um, and we lost both of my parents. And the process of grief is something that's very personal for different people. And I kind of wanted just to explore how people, handle grief. And yeah, it was. I do try to tap into that other side of men that we don't often get to see, especially in short films.
Javed?
Yeah, well, for me, well, a lot of my stories are personal in a way. But for this, there's this stereotypical thing with conventions and Caribbean people in general that they had like this bad boy mentality, right? It's like, oh, my heart cold, I don't really have feelings to this and so forth and so forth. So and they really portray that sort of image because they don't want to be vulnerable, they don't want to be seen as weak, right? But what I wanted to show was that sometimes when you behave that way, you don't know how it's affecting the people around you. Understand? So you being open and vulnerable to your feelings, take into consideration other people's feelings. And because, like I said, you never know who exactly you're affecting around you. So that was the reason behind it, man.
And Maya, your film is showing a specifically feminine perspective of this soca dancer. What inspired you to, enter this world that we don't usually see behind the scenes?
I spent most of my teenage years working as a dancer. So I was a part of a all-girl dance group called Blackouts, and we would go on Synergy TV every week for something called Digicel's Best Dance Crew. And so like a lot, and I remember, well, CXC is such a big deal in the Caribbean and getting all like your passes. So I remember, we were doing that like around the time where we were in like Form 5 and all our parents, and I remember my grandparents were terrified. They called my parents up and said, oh my God, she's gonna fail CXC. Like she's not studying, she's out with this dance group. We're seeing her on TV every week. But that was just like such a huge part of our experience growing up, being around those women and that sisterhood. And like some of, the girls I met from dance are like my closest friends to this day. So it really just felt like a world that I felt, it's just a world that it felt personal and a world that I felt very connected to. And yeah, and we just spent a lot of time backstage, like being backstage and waiting for gigs and like that kind of camaraderie that happens behind the scenes. Being in bathrooms in front of mirrors, getting ready. So like a lot of that just felt like a world and like images that I was connected to. I just naturally felt like something that I wanted to sort of explore on film.
And all the films that we saw in this package really captured a lot of the essential aspects of Caribbean culture, from the food to the music to dance. And it had me thinking about, there's been this misconception, I think, that Caribbean films need to, water down the language and water down the slang. I was wondering how you guys have, approached this question of authenticity and representation in your work.
That's a great point. um, my thing is, I think there's certain stories that are universal, and it doesn't matter necessarily like where it's from or where you're from, but there's themes that no matter where you're from, you can connect to, and I don't feel that you necessarily do need to water down what you have, because the idea, the gist of it, people will get and they'll be able to connect to. So this is why I think it's, why Caribbean stories need to be told and shared, because there's such a wide audience out there that will get our work with us not trying to like be anything other than authentic.
I think you're muted, Javed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, just to add on what Juliette said, these are our stories. There's if you realize a lot of what we are intaking in entertainment is a lot of the American culture. That's what I'm saying. So we probably know more about the American culture than we know about our own Caribbean culture. And it's because over there they don't really care about us not approaching their stuff. They're giving their stories and we're just taking them. So why can't we just give our stories as raw as it is, with our dialects and our cultures and our traditions and so forth. And like you said, people expecting us to water it down, but we should be able to just tell our stories how it is from our culture and just put it out there. Because this is us telling our stories, these are our stories. Should be accepted as it is. Yeah.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. And I want to second that. I just think you're right. Like we grew up consuming American content and entertainment our whole lives. And you're right, they're not thinking about whether or not, we can understand it. And so as Caribbean filmmakers, we should just have the same approach. Like, so what if they don't get it? So what if they can't understand what we're saying? Like, I think too, there's something kind of like prohibiting about making films thinking about those restrictions. And so, yeah, it's like, I think a lot of Caribbean storytellers, like what I do see is that we aren't watering things down. I don't think I've ever seen, a Caribbean film where I felt like we were trying to water it down or, make the dialect tame. And it's crazy too, like even on a larger scale now, where you're looking at small acts, which is, in the mainstream, sort of like at the center of everyone's attention globally. And you listen to the dialect and, the Gag accents, you're hearing the Trinidadian accents, the Jamaican dialect, and if Steve McQueen doesn't care, like, why should we? So I think it's kind of great to like see, that and to see on that scale that, directors on that scale also do like have the confidence to just kind of like go out and tell stories without watering it down.
And before we go into the audience questions, I wanted to know, what is your favorite thing and the most challenging thing about being a Caribbean filmmaker?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question. For me, my favorite thing about being a Caribbean filmmaker is just the fact that we have so much stories to tell. We have so much rich culture and traditions that we can really turn into to stories. I mean, for example, folklore, for one. Those can make a really interesting story. So I'm for one, I'm excited about that because, these are things I want to dive into and really just put out there, you know. But the challenging part about being a Caribbean filmmaker is that the people themselves don't exactly see it as something we can really get into. They don't take it serious. So the support itself is very hard at times. Yeah.
Hey, Javid, you literally took the words out of my mouth. That is exactly it. We have such a wealth. Like, there's so many stories to be told from the Caribbean. So many of folklore, history, everything, and we're all sitting on this big gold mine. But unfortunately, we're still needing to like get Caribbean audiences to take us seriously into we can get good films coming from our own places, our own countries. Let me take them seriously. Let me go watch them in the cinema. Let me tell TV stations, hey, we want more local. I mean,
Exactly.
it's getting a little better, a little bit by bit, but we still have a long way to go. So, but I'm hopeful though. I'm hopeful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like they both touched on everything, but I think the challenge for us, especially in Trinidad, like on the ground, is just always like funding, getting our ideas funded, because a lot of us throughout the year we work on commercials, and we have a lot of very talented writers and directors, and we want to tell our own stories, and we want to make our films and tell personal stories, and I think the challenge is like a lot of us to, just out of practicality to support ourselves, end up just doing commercial work all year. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges, and like how we've dealt with that is just kind of creating a lot of informal groups and a lot of informal networks. And so we work on each other's films for free. Right now I'm in a WhatsApp group with a few other screenwriters, such as Oliver Milne and Ryan, and we send each other scripts and read them and give each other feedback. So I think the challenge is the lack of infrastructure to sort of like make, the narrative films that we want to make, and the projects that we're passionate about. But we've sort of dealt with that by just kind of like keeping an informal network going and really just supporting each other, and kind of like we support each other through like a very strong barter system. Like, I'll work on your thing for free this time, and then you got my back the next time, and it's kind of like that give and take. That really kind of keeps it alive. And I think, yeah, like one of the rewarding things out of being a Caribbean filmmaker is that, is the fact that like we have to be resourceful. A lot of the films we're doing on very small budgets, very much guerrilla style shoots, but I think there's something kind of rewarding about that small scale, and that sort of community experience behind getting on.
Okay, now we're going to take a few questions from the audience. The first question goes out to everyone. Ash Gallagher asks, are there any particular narrative films that have inspired your work?
I could jump in first. I was really, for the feature-length film, I was really inspired by Girlhood, which is a French film, and I remember I sat with my lead actor Nessa. We watched the film together, because I felt like the lead's performance was so strong. I mean, it's a coming of age story, but there was just so much that was like said in the silent moments, or the moments where she wasn't speaking, and you really just felt like this very tangible change, or like arc in her growth, and so like that film was like very inspirational for me, and it was kind of nice to like sit with my lead actor and like watch that film together to like study her performance. And I think we both got a lot out of doing that.
Well, for me personally, a lot of my work is inspired by almost all of Tyler Perry's work, because he's one of my favorite directors out there, and his work reflects my work reflects exactly what he does, right? He, like I said, I want to address social issues, and he does that in his films as well. And what he showed me is that, nobody want to come on screen and see what they go through every day. It'll be draining. I don't know how to make it feel like, okay, we're being heard, and we have a voice out there for us. So his films, somehow they did not hit the nail on the head with that. And so my work, that's inspired by his work. Yeah.
It's hard for me to say. For this particular film, it was not necessarily inspired by any specific film, but I would say it was only when I left Trinidad and started getting access to seeing foreign films, films from Europe and China and Asia, that I began to see a different way of telling stories that were not based on sort of the American commercial films, which was pretty much all I grew up watching. But by seeing, international films from different cultures and different ways, made me realize the way of telling stories is very different, but it's still getting the story across. So I try not to necessarily try to follow any particular genre, but just sort of like just try to tell my story in my way, and hope that I can still reach an audience with how I'm seeing the world a little bit. So yeah.
The next question is from Maya. You mentioned your cast was made up of untrained actors. In what ways did they surprise or impress you during shooting?
In every way. I just felt like I just was always surprised. And I think what was most exciting about working with Onessa, especially, who ended up being cast as the lead in the feature as well, is that I never, I guess, she auditioned in person, but there was a moment on set when we were shooting the short, like where I finally got to see her through the monitor. You know, like we lit this space, we framed up, and she was on camera, and I looked at her through the monitor for the first time, and I was like there was just something, I don't even have the words to explain it, that made me go wow. Like, and I remember my AD was there with me, and she looked at the monitor as well, and she said, okay. It's because it was just this thing of realizing that she just had to do very little to sort of like, you know, be able to tell like what she was thinking, and how she was feeling, and there's something kind of like more intimate about film than theater, because, you know, theater is on a stage, it's larger, and we don't quite get as close to our actors, but there was something about finally like being able to like see her that closely and that intimately, that was just surprising for me, and exciting, so I think, yeah, the process of like working with non-actors, and because they don't have reels, you know, they've never worked on any other film, so you're really seeing them for the first time on set. And so yeah, there's always surprises, and I was always impressed. So that was a pretty rewarding experience.
The next question goes to everyone. What challenges does everyone face finding cast and crew for your productions, especially Javed in a smaller island like St. Vincent? And do you have any tips?
Well, finding cast and crew is very challenging for me. At first it was, because jumping straight into the tips, you need to network yourself as much as possible, right? Because when I first started, you know, I didn't really know anyone in the business. So really finding proper actors and crew to come along with this was very challenging. But as you start to go more on your work, start to speak for itself, you start to just connect with people, and then, you know, you just grow your team. So right now I have actors that I could call in at any time, you know, crew members that I could call in at any time. You know, so just network yourself. Yeah.
I think what I've been trying to do over the years is watch a lot of other films from Trinidad and from the Caribbean, and make note of like who's interesting, who's working, who shot this, or who did the sound for this, or who did the music, and try and keep abreast of who these people are, and even connect to them and contact them. Even I may have no project going on, but at least kind of establish a little bit of networking that way. And I think in terms of casting, especially if you're coming from a smaller place, is to your things outside of the box when it comes to casting, because like Maya is a great example of like working with non-actors. It can be amazing and rewarding. But where it really works is if you cast close to type, you know, then you have very little acting that they really need to be doing, and it will help you a lot. Um, and your Instagram, following people, you know, interesting people on Instagram, um, and yeah, just keep track of who's doing what around the world, around the Caribbean, in your country. Go to theater shows if there's anything going on, any dramatic productions or anything like that. Heck, even you know, looking at local commercials, like is there an interesting character in a commercial? Who's that called? The advertising agency. Um, but yeah, just kind of keeping an open mind as you're looking.
Um, just to add on what Juliette said, two things as well. One, what I did at first first, when I was just starting out, was that when I'm writing scripts, I basically characters around the person that I had, that I know I could have cast already, so that it didn't have to do like any extra type of acting or anything. It would just be themselves, right? And second, at first I casted a lot of my close friends and family, because those are who I had access to. I mean, they weren't the best actors, but I got it done anyways. So at least I got content to put out. And it's always the best to just take that step and have something. So yeah.
We have a question for Javed from Rory. He says he loved the film, and he's asking, do you think current films or media have contributed to the negative way that people interact with each other?
All right. First of all, thanks, Rory. Thank you very much. In a way, not all of them, but there's some that do, because there are some out there that put out certain energy and ideas that influence people in the wrong way, right? And there are some people out there that are very easily influenced, and some of these things start trends, and trends get around so fast, and sometimes the messages are so subliminal that you don't really pick up that they're influencing you in such a negative way. So it's a 50-50 thing. There are some that does that, and then there's some that doesn't. Yeah.
Not seeing any more questions. So if that's it okay, one just came in. A question from Maya. It was clear from your film that is not shot from the male gaze. How can dancehall be linked to positive expressions of Caribbean female sexuality?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's such a clever question, and it's something that I think about frequently, and I think it's just more and more important that we do have prominent, empowering voices at the forefront of the dancehall space. Like it's like, if I think of Shensia, I think of we have women at the head of dancehall giving their perspective and talking about how they feel, how they take charge of their sexuality, their bodies, how they present themselves, and there's a lot of I guess a lot of power, and there's a lot of agency in their lyrics, and I think that's just like important, that we just have more like women at the forefront of this genre, kind of like giving the fight back, even if there's like sexist lyrics on the other end. It's like, okay, we could come back to that. And I just think yeah, just having like a inclusive narrative is what's important.
That question actually gets me thinking about, there's a lot of, in the Caribbean, has been traditionally conservative. And I was wondering if you were ever apprehensive about, portraying and owning that sexuality. I mean, your film, there's some curse words, it's very explicit about these women and the world that they're in. And I was wondering if you ever had apprehension, or you were always very confident that you could tell this story from that authentic place.
I think it's, my experiences growing up are like very, diverse. Like I was always in front of the camera. So, and from a very young age, I started modeling carnival costumes. So like from the time I was 17, I was modeling carnival costumes, and I always sort of was like navigating that space of like being in front of the camera, and thinking about, because it's like in the entertainment industry, especially if you're like working as a model or a dancer, and you're in that space where yes, you can be subjected to the male gaze, or even at times like feel objectified. I think what was important for me as I got older was like understanding that like that I had choice, and so that I can sort of like take back my power in those settings. And I think it's just important for women to just do whatever they're comfortable with. Like if that's not for you, then you have, the power to say, this is not me, I don't like this. And then if it is something that you are comfortable with, I think it's just really about having the ability to choose how you want to express yourself, how you want to identify. And yeah, so I think those are things that too, like, and it's very similar to the feature film, because I think my lead character in the feature film is figuring those things out. And I definitely felt like, you know, when I was a teenager, that I had to sort of figure that out. And now, like, I'm older and I'm like, okay, well, you know, and I also am like very sensitive about respectability politics. So I'm, you know, thinking, okay, so if I'm out and I want to, you know, pose in this bikini, why does not mean that I can't be doing other things or pursuing a career, or, you know, like getting my MFA at grad school? Like, why are those things sort of like contradictory? And I think it's just really important that we're able to sort of have the choice to choose what feels good for us as women, what we want to engage with, what we don't want to engage with. And I think women who reject that, that's also great as well. You know, I just think, yeah, these are all questions that are interesting, and I'm glad that they were raised. And that's the things that I think about pretty frequently. And I'm very happy to know that the short did not feel like it was shot from the male gaze. So that's good to hear.
We have a question for Juliette. I love the lush background of Trinidad in the mountains. Was it challenging filming in that environment? And this person said they noticed in one scene, the wind came through the trees at the perfect moment. How did you manage to capture that?
Oh, I'm so happy when people see that moment because, first of all, I was really lucky. I had, a few years before, I was a producer on a feature film called The Cutlass, and so I did a lot of the location scouting, and I met the owner of this estate. It's a cocoa estate. It's in Santa Cruz. It's called Las Hermanas Estate, and it is 200 acres, and the owner is a good, kind-hearted person. I said, look, I have no money. Can I please shoot on your estate? And he said, yeah. So that was just lucky. And yeah, it was kind of up quite a high hill, but we were able to get up there, and it may look like a lot of locations, but it was all just one very small location that I just turned the camera around as much as possible to make it look like a lot of different locations, but it was all within a very tiny spot in the estate. And yeah, I was saying before, you know, sometimes it's really hard doing film, but once in a while you get like a little blight, a little kindness, like something good will happen to keep you going. And that wind that came in at that specific point, it was almost like magic. It just happened. He happened to speak and pause, and then he laughs at the moment because he was actually laughing because of, like, it was an actual real moment because he was laughing at, oh my god, this is like a perfect thing. And actually we did 2 takes of that scene, and both times the wind came through, and it was almost like, all right, don't give up. So I joke and say, yeah, that's my most expensive shot for the film, because if I actually did have the wind, it'd be like I'd have had to hire like a gigantic fan. But you know, nature worked with me, and you know, kept me motivating, because yeah, doing that film was pretty tough.
Yes. We have another question. Lots of questions today. I would love to know what resources you would recommend up-and-coming filmmakers to take note of, people to follow on Instagram or websites to check out. Any recommendations that any of you have?
For me, personally, I learned a lot about film because I didn't went to film school. I had no mentors or anything like that. I learned a lot from YouTube. YouTube would be the biggest resource right now because a lot of the stuff are right there. You can learn a lot from right there. There's a specific YouTube channel that I follow and an Instagram page as well. They're called Film Riot. You know, they go in depth with a lot of this stuff. They break down a lot of the, you know, these big Hollywood stuff that you're seeing. They break them down and show you exactly how they're done. You know, they teach you how to you know, make budget films, micro budget, no budget, and so forth. So yeah, YouTube for a fact will be your biggest resource right now. So just put those hours in with the tutorials, and you'll be good.
Yeah, I wish when I was starting out there was as many resources available. I I would recommend nofilmschool.com. They have some really great resources. Also, I would recommend to go, if you're a filmmaker, go on stage32.com, which is like Facebook, but like for filmmakers. And you find like a huge amount of courses and workshops being taught there by actual people in the industry from LA and Hollywood, but it's also a huge networking environment for filmmakers and producers and writers and directors. So go on there and check it out. I taught myself Da Vinci during COVID using udemy.com. They had a really cool course, like a 6-week course. Yeah, there's some definitely some good, there's some good, you can even just websites to learn filmmaking on, and just explore and see what works best for your time and your pocket.
And the next question goes out to
Yeah.
everyone. Oh, sorry, Maya, go ahead.
No, it's fine. We can move on. I was just gonna say, to add to the advice, I was just gonna say, like, watch as many movies as possible. Like, just watch films. There was a point in time when I was in film school, and I just felt this major insecurity because I was in class with, people who, were 19, and they'd seen every sort of like French New Wave film, and they could tell you every date and talk at length about Italian neorealism and Dogman, all these movements. And I just remember thinking, okay, like coming from Trinidad, where, the only theater we have is just showing us the latest Hulk. Like there was just like this major like insecurity that I felt. And so like my goal was just immediately to just watch as many films as possible. And I think there was this little DVD store that we had at our film school where we could rent DVDs. And I would make a habit of like renting DVDs every week. And I tried to watch a movie a day. And sometimes it's hard because I would get really tired and I would like fall asleep, like while watching a movie. But it was just like really important to like force myself to just watch a movie a day. And I realized there's just like most of the learning really just happens by watching films, because everything has been, I mean, I don't want to say everything has been done before. Maybe we can reinvent the wheel, but I think a lot has been done before us. And there's just really so much to learn and to absorb by watching films. So my advice would just be to like watch as many films as you possibly can, as often and as frequently as you can.
And I can relate to that to myself, because as a self-taught film critic, I just watched lots of movies, as many as I could from all over, and reading other writers. So reading and watching and learning for yourself is definitely good advice. Javed, you had something to add?
Yeah, I was gonna say as well, what you should do as well, head to the Hairouna Film Festival page itself and follow as much filmmakers as you can on the page itself. Because like I said, we are Caribbean filmmakers, we're all creatives, and we know the struggle. And trust me, we would be willing to extend the help to you, and you would be able to learn from us because you're going to be there in the process with us, because we're still learning, we're still in the process of learning. So while we're there learning, you could learn as well. So like I said as well, network yourself. Network yourself as much as possible. So you should do that as well. Yep.
And Javed, there's a question asking about the sound. They said the sound was very realistic and it felt like you were there with the actors. How did you achieve this?
If he's talking about the audio itself or the dialogue, or the sound is in the music we used. If it's the song for the dialogue, well, I had someone specifically for that. I had someone who was experienced in that, there to do that. Like I said, network itself, because it would be very helpful. And like I said, I just explained to the person the emotions that I was trying to put through this and the message I was trying to do it, pull from this stuff. And he just did his thing and it came out really well. Yeah.
And for everyone, we want to know, what do you guys have planned next?
Well, for me, I'm actually give out a little something. So I'm actually in the process of shooting a spin-off of the film itself of Their True Story because the feedback was so amazing from it. Everybody loved it, and they were requesting a part two for it. But what we decided to do was sort of a spin-off instead of a part two, because what they're requesting is two specific characters they wanted to know more about inside the film. So we did a spin-off with it, and we actually just finished today. So yeah, we look out for it. It'll be coming soon. Yeah.
I could jump in. Oh, sorry, Julia. I didn't hear anybody talking.
Okay, well, I have having a couple of features now. I'm trying to decide which one to, put out into the world and, start that whole process of funding. But I've also I shot a short film during lockdown with green screen, which is kind of very different and experimental. So I'm currently finishing up some reshoots for it and getting it ready for the next round of film festivals. It's a show about relationships, a relationship from beginning, from hello to I hate you, all in 7 scenes. So we'll see how that goes. And currently I'm shooting a documentary about transitioning children from children's homes when they turn 18.
Yeah, similarly to Julia, I just have a few projects that I'm sort of developing and seeing which one, waiting to see which one I'm move forward with. Since She Paradise showed at AFI Fest, a few production companies have sent scripts, and so I've been reading through those and possibly thinking about rewriting some, but really I'm just kind of like in the process of searching. And so I've reached out to a few writers who I think might be interesting to like read their screenplays. In terms of what I'm writing myself, I am currently like co-writing or co-developing a TV series on Calypso Rose's life with the same co-writer from She Paradise. So Calypso Rose is, well, she won Calypso, she won the Calypso King competition, which led them to change the title of the competition from Calypso King to Calypso Monarch. So they had to choose a gender neutral title because she was this woman that won it. And she's the oldest woman to ever perform at Coachella. She came out as openly queer, I think, when she was 70. And no one, we always knew of her as this like very prominent Calypsonian, but no one knew of her sexuality. So she sort of like lived almost her, her whole life like in the closet, but really kind of like getting into like the raw material about her life, but like the research has been very interesting. And so we're developing a series that sort of like chronicles her journey from her childhood in Tobago. She was the daughter of a spiritual Baptist preacher in Tobago, and then she got adopted by her aunt and moved to Port of Spain. But her aunt would have been in Port of Spain around the time when, the American army base was in Trinidad because of World War II. And so there were a lot of Calypso tents, and that was such a prominent part of the culture back then. But interestingly enough, too, like when you look at the time, like there's a very popular song by the Andrews sisters called Rum and Coca-Cola that everyone knows, but it was stolen by a Trinidadian Calypsonian, and the original version talks about like the Yankee man and the woman complaining that the woman get treated better by the Yankee man. So like the original lyrics to that song is actually like, by, I think it's Lord Invader that sang the original. I hope I'm not wrong, oh my God. But yes, I think so. He sang the original, and so like it just the backdrop of Puerto Rico in that time has been just really interesting to kind of dive into and learn about. But so that's something that I have in development, and I'm also just sort of like working on smaller projects like in between that.
And we're going to wrap up with one more question for all of you. What do you see for the future of the Caribbean film industry? Do you expect to see more collaborations? Do you think we're going to break out on the world stage? What do you see for the future?
I definitely see a potential for us to break out into the international world. I see it and I feel it. I hope it happens, and I'm also seeing more, Caribbean voices that are being true to the Caribbean, not trying to copy, American shows, American style shows. Like they're digging into their own culture and their own roots and their own stories in very unique ways, which is really exciting to see as well. That's what I think. And that's what I hope for, actually.
Yeah, for me personally, the future of the Caribbean film industry is looking very bright, in my opinion, and the Hairouna Film Festival helped me to realize this too, because there's so much potential out there. There's so much potential. And what I say a lot, and I tell my team a lot, I could be wrong too, but what I tell them is that, very soon the American film industry will get boring, because if you realize now they tell a lot of the same story just over in different ways. So it will be getting boring, and they're gonna turn their eyes to look elsewhere. And we're gonna be here with our untapped potential and our stories to tell. And by that time we would already be rising to a level, because as to the pace of what I see Caribbean films are going right now, it's looking very promising. Yep.
Just to add to that, I just hope to see like more films being made from the Caribbean region. And I think as we do it more and more, I think we'll just figure out like our formula, like how can we get films made at the budget level that we have available to us. How, what's the strategy like for collaboration? Like how do we, because the crew availability is also so small and very specific, on the island. It's like, like each film role, just a handful of people that do that. So it's like just kind of figuring out the formula and like getting an engine going so that we can have like more of these films on the scale just kind of being made back to back, hopefully.
Yeah, I just want to use this opportunity to thank you guys again for joining us and sharing with us your films. Thank you to the team at Hairouna Film Festival. It has been such a success to have a Caribbean film festival during this time when we're all inside, and just to see these new perspectives and open our minds and our ideas. So thanks again, everyone. Thank you to the audience for tuning in, and wishing you all a wonderful weekend and hoping that the rest of this year is better and we recover from this pandemic. Thanks again, everyone, and have a good evening. Bye.
Thank you.
Same.
All the best, everyone. Take care.